over the weekend, like I said, I had a wonderful opportunity to hang with some really cool, smart folks up in McHenry County. But I also had a chance to go and see a performance that really leans into one of our historical events that in many ways may have changed the course of public discourse in America. Certainly, it changed the views of many people when it comes to one of the greatest writers of all time, and that would be James Baldwin. And we're talking about the debate that took place in 1965, February 18th, 1965. And that was to an overflow crowd at the Cambridge Union in Cambridge, England, to witness a historic televised debate between James Baldwin and William F. Buckley. Baldwin was a leading literary voice in the civil rights movement at the time in the 60s, while Buckley was a critic, a fierce critic, I would say, of America's most influential and one of the country's, I'll say, most influential conservative intellectuals. I guess you could, if you want to give him that label. This was talking about the racial conflicts that were taking place in America, and the two of them put the gloves on and went after it. So I had a chance to see a production of that on Saturday at the TimeLine Theater at DePaul. It was fantastic to be there. Wonderful performance. This morning, however, we have with us the artistic director for the TimeLine Theater, and that would be none other than PJ Powers. Good morning, PJ. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me this morning.
Good. Make sure, can you hear us okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, good. You had a little bit of static when you first came on. So,
oh, okay.
All right, good. Man, listen, let me just dive into the deep end of the pool. What a great performance by all of the performers on Saturday. And I'm old enough. I was alive. I'd been here for a few years when the actual debate took place at the Cambridge Union. But as part of my history and learning and schooling, I became aware of it as I got older and saw the old, recordings of it and listened to them. One of the things that I took from the performance on Saturday, is that the number of people who were there that were blown away by the stylistic way that you guys put this together. So describe, if you can, how you put this together, the way in which the set was designed, if you will, and in this very live, almost interactive performance.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. So TimeLine Theater has partnered with two other organizations for this, a company out of Brooklyn called the American Vicarious, who had first created this show to basically reenact the debate from 1965. And then we also partnered with my alma mater, which is the theater school at DePaul University, and they are hosting us, as you mentioned, on their campus. And part of that was logistical because TimeLine is currently building our new home in Uptown. So this year we're performing all over the city. But this was also an opportunity to sort of lean into what makes this theatrical experience so cool and unique. And as you referenced, we're staging it in this old Gothic style grand hall, I guess I would describe it. It's called the Cortelyou Commons building, sort of nestled in amongst a bunch of buildings near like the Fullerton L stop in Lincoln Park. And it's just this grand hall meant to replicate what the feeling was like to be in the Cambridge Union 60 years ago. So audience members are all seated in just two rows of chairs in a circle or in a rectangle around the debaters. So you really get a sense of what it might have been like to be packed into that room 60 years ago when these guys made history. So it is verbatim taken from what the original debate was. And this past week was really special because on Tuesday of last week, we did two performances on the actual 60th anniversary of the debate. We did a 10 a.m. show for some Chicago Public High School students, and then we did an evening show for broader audience.
Well, you guys, the run was till March 2nd. Is that correct? It's running till next Sunday.
Yep. Through this coming Sunday. Yep. There's six performances left. Tickets are going fast.
Well, I'm gonna do my little plug for it, and that is, you guys, you want to see this? It's a debate. Baldwin versus Buckley will be presented at DePaul University's Cortelyou Commons, located at 2324 North Fremont, here in Chicago's Lincoln Park neighborhood. If you can get tickets, you should go see this. And just Google, that's the great thing about Google, is you can find what you got to find. But make sure that you guys, if you can get out to see this, that you treat yourself to it for a couple of reasons. One of them, the historical importance of it as to where we are today. The other part is the unbelievable performance. And unbelievable is not the right word. These guys are talented performers, and they were phenomenal. And it always kind of humbles you. And I know you, as an artistic director, probably even see this in your own working with so many artists. But it humbles a person when you see someone that can stand in front and perform like these four gentlemen did, and particularly Teagle and Eric. Talk a little bit about them and working with them, their skill set, what they bring to this conversation.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, so these two actors, Teagle and Eric, who play Baldwin and Buckley, and then they're also joined on stage with two students who are actual fourth-year theater school students at DePaul, because at the original debate 60 years ago, there were two Cambridge students who sort of kicked off the debate, framing the conversation. And so we're doing the same thing here and using actual DePaul students. But Teagle and Eric have now been embodying Baldwin and Buckley over the past 4 years, performing this in New York and London. They actually performed it at the Cambridge Union, and have been taking it around the country. But TimeLine brought them here to Chicago for what is the longest run that they've done thus far. So it's been running for the past 4 weeks, and as you mentioned, it's got 1 week left to go. And, I will say Teagle and Eric and the director, Christopher McElroan, specifically didn't set out to do impersonations of Baldwin and Buckley. I mean, you definitely get a flavor of who those two guys were, but their approach was really to use their words, use their arguments, and put them in the mouths of contemporary artists to see how those words still resonate 60 years from now. And that's I think been one of the big takeaways from audience members, just the shock and bewilderment that their arguments, Baldwin's in particular, depressingly still resonate all too much 60 years later.
Yeah, I think that was one of the common post-performance comments from the audience. I know myself, when I had I made a few comments post the performance about one of the lines in the performance is the progress, or the lack of progress, if you will, without spoiling it for people who haven't seen it. And it's the thing that I commented on is, here we are, it's 2025, and these conversations about progress in our country, we're still having many of them almost to the letter of the word, and that we've just been a country in many ways, and all of our greatness, of wash, rinse, and repeat some of the same old isms that we just won't break away from. And when you think about it, with regard to one of the things that Eric spoke of, he said that, Eric Miller said that as the one that was performing as in the Buckley role, he said that we, to your point, PJ, are still having these conversations. And if you don't believe it, just look at how some of the current journalists or voices are still saying some of the same things that Buckley said 60 years ago, and he put out the fact that Tucker Carlson is even named his son Buckley, one of his sons Buckley. So, we still repeat these same conversations, and we haven't made the progress in so many ways that some groups would like to say that we have. And that Buckley put this in his conversation, that look at all these things that have happened to the Negro, and yet the Negro is still failing. Whose fault is that? You guys should, if you can get out and see it, it will be good for you. Those of the folks who are progressives and those who are not, to understand where we have come from, but maybe not as far as sometimes we like to window dress that conversation. And your guys did such a wonderful job of that in the performance that we saw on Saturday.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. And, this really gets at the heart of what TimeLine's mission has been for 28 years. It's to connect past with present. So all of our plays explore history really as a way to spark conversation about social and political issues in the here and now. And I'm sad to say that this debate from 60 years ago, hits that sweet spot, because it is very much about the here and now.
It is. And that was what came so much of a haunting reminder to me that, and I know this because I talk about it every day, and I read and research on it every day. But it's also part of what I've said to so many people, that we don't. The conversation that I've had often with folks, and the phrasing that I've used so many times is, people have said, I've made this comment, there are monsters in the closet. And people have said, no, Richard, there's no monster. We look at all the progress we've made. Look at all the great things that we've done. And those things are true. And then I've said, now the monsters are under the bed. People, well, no, Richard, look at this, look at that. And then now the monsters are in bed with us. And going back to something that was part of the debate, part of the performance, is no, these things aren't happening. Look at all this. Look at these scenarios where we have this, one person that does such great things in the black community specifically. How can black Americans say that we haven't made progress? And this is one of the conversation points in the debate between Baldwin and Buckley, is that just because you have me, because Buckley tries to say, James, you should be ashamed of yourself, because here you are, this representative of successful Negroes. How dare you say that we have we've killed the dream of America, because you are a representation of the success of blacks in America. And it's just a real interesting, interplay and dynamic back and forth between these two. We have a couple of clips, PJ, that I'd like to play. We've got the time.
Great.
I'd like the audience, if you're okay with that, to hear a couple of clips from the performance. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
All right, we're going to go forward with those. Devin, you got those? Let's actually go with Buckley first, and then we'll do Baldwin second.
Let me urge this point to you, ladies and gentlemen, which I can with authority tonight. It's the only thing I can. And that is to say that in the United States, there is a concern for the Negro problem. Now, if you get up to me and say, is it the kind of concern that we, the students of Cambridge, would show if the problem our own? All I can say is, I don't know. It may very well be that there's been some sort of a sunburst of moral enlightenment that's hit this community in such a way so as to make it predictable that if you were the governors of the United States, the situation would change overnight. I'm willing to grant this, Mr. President, as a form of courtesy. But meanwhile, I am telling you that the engines of concern in the United States are working. The presence of Mr. Baldwin here tonight is in part a reflection of that concern. You cannot go to a university in the United States, also presumably governed by the Lord Spiritual, as you all are here, in which Mr. Baldwin is not the toast of the town. You cannot go to a university in the United States in which practically all other problems of public policy are not preempted by the primary policy of concern for the Negro. In fact, I challenge you. Name me another civilization, anytime, anywhere, in the history of the world in which the problems of a minority who's shown considerable political and material advancement is as much a cause of dramatic concern as it is in the United States. Because if one thing I can tell you, Americans are not willing to do, and not willing, as a result of the exasperation of Mr. Baldwin, to say that the entire American proposition was an unfortunate experiment.
So that is what we, yeah, great performances by the way, guys who are listening and following. You need, if you can go see it, great. Make sure you can kind of get yourself out. We've got still a week left, but that just goes back to the point about how I'll break it down in my language. You got one Negro that's successful in getting all this attention. Why are you screaming and yelling about what others are not getting? That's really let's filter through all the fancy language and let's cut to the chase. That, you women, you LGBTQs, you Muslims, Hispanics, and Negroes need to shut up. You got a few that have made it across the finish line. Why are you still whining and complaining? That's the cut through the filter. That's the cutting through the fog, I should say, of what Buckley didn't have the guts to say. Frankly, would you agree or disagree?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And his phrase, the engines are working, and you referenced Tucker Carlson earlier. Yeah, you just have to close your eyes and hear the talking heads of today. Like, well, we don't need DEI programs. We don't need universities having affinity groups. We're in a perfect society. Everything's working. It's breathtaking.
Yet at the same time, there are those who say, but what about all these issues that are causing white men to not prosper and go forward? At the same time saying, you Negroes, you LGBTQ folks, you women, you other communities, isn't that enough?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
let's play the clip of Mr. Baldwin.
It seems to me the proposition before the House, and I would put it that way, is the American dream at the expense of the American Negro, or the American dream is at the expense of the American Negro, is a question hideously loaded. Then one's response to that question, one's reaction to that question, has to depend on effect. And in effect, where you find yourself in the world, what your sense of reality is, what your system of reality is. That is, it depends on assumptions we hold so deeply so as to be scarcely aware of them. A white South African, a Mississippi sharecropper, a Mississippi sheriff, a Frenchman driven out of Algeria, all have at bottom their own system of reality, which compels them, in the case of the French exile in Algeria, to defend French reasons for having ruled in Algeria. The Mississippi or Alabama sheriff who really does believe when he's facing a Negro boy or girl, this woman, this man, this child must be insane, to attack the system to which he owes his entire identity. Well, to such a person, the proposition we are trying to discuss here tonight does not exist. And on the other hand, I have to speak as one of the people who have been most attacked by what we now must here call the Western or European system of reality. What white people in the world, what we call white supremacy, and I hate to say it here, it came from Europe. That's how it got to America. Beneath then, whatever one's reaction to the proposition is, has to be the question: can civilizations be considered as such, equal? Or does one civilization have the right to overtake, subjugate, and in fact to destroy another? Now, what happens when that happens?
It's a brilliant performance. I mean, first and foremost, the original debate in of itself was brilliant, and it was phenomenal, and all kinds of wonderful, glowing words. However, watching the gentleman perform on Saturday was really a reminder to me of, there's some talented folks out there. So kudos to you, PJ, and to Cortelyou Commons and all the rest for helping to bring this to Chicago. And we applaud you for your, your hard work in that space. But man, what a wonderful performance! What a wonderful performance!
Well, thank you. I appreciate you uplifting it and shining a light on it. And you got one more week for people to get out. We run through this Sunday, March 2nd.
That's great. So PJ, I mean, with the work that you're doing, I heard you got a lot going on. What are some of the other events that you see coming your way, and what are you working on?
Yeah, so TimeLine, which is now in its 28th year, we are currently building the first home of our own. We had been in residence at a 100-year-old church building in East Lakeview for most of our existence, and we've performed all over the city, but we're finally putting down roots at Broadway and Argyle 5035 North Broadway. So opening about this time next year will be an amazing new facility that will be a cafe and bar and exhibit gallery and education space and a theater and all of TimeLine's operations under that roof with our offices and rehearsal space. But it's going to be a really amazing new venue in Uptown, adding to all the richness that already exists there with, music venues like the Aragon Ballroom and the Riviera and Green Mill. So we will be opening that new home for TimeLine in 2026. But between now and then, we've got one more show coming up this spring. We're partnering with Writers Theater up in Glencoe for a brand new play called Daba on Devon Avenue, which is about a Indian American restaurant on that great street known as Devon here. Yeah,
it definitely is. PJ Powers, man, thanks for being with us this morning. Thank you for bringing such a wonderful production of an amazing debate, and I'm really happy for all the work that you guys are doing, and looking forward to being a part of what you're going to have in store for us in 2026. So thanks for being with us this morning. Get out and see the performance, guys. You should treat yourself to this. You should empower yourselves with this. And I trust me when I tell you, it will be one of the best uses of your time, particularly in the current environment that we're in on our regional, local, and national scale politically. So thanks again, PJ, for being on Choose Views.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Have a good one.
I will. You too, man. Take care.